Hello, I'm Dr. Leslie Torres Rodriguez, Superintendent of Hartford Public Schools. Today we are joined by our three finalists for the title of Hartford Public Schools Teacher of the Year 2017. Caitlin Jacobs, kindergarten and first grade teacher at Breakthrough Magnet School, North Campus. William Conroy, TESOL teacher at McDonough Expeditionary Learning School. And Sonia Turner, a sixth grade teacher at Annie Fisher STEM Magnet School, who we should mention last Thursday night won the title of Hartford Public Schools Teacher of the Year 2017. Congratulations to all of you, and I want to thank you for your hard work and your dedication to our students. You make the magic happen in the classrooms for our students. So thank you for being here, for all that that you do. I have some questions for all of you, and I'm going to start, Sonia, with you. I'm reflecting on the acceptance speech, and you talked about growing up in Hartford, your experience, and the fact that you are committed to supporting your students and making sure that they persevere through their learning. Can you talk to us a little bit about that whole experience?
Well, when I look at my students, I think that all of them come to me with a story. They have their own stories, whether it's being a non-proficient reader or divorced parents or single family or living in poverty or a violent community. And I feel it's my job as a teacher, and I call myself a mentor and therapist, to mend those broken hearts when they walk into my classroom. It's my job to make sure that they aren't burdened down with adult problems, because they are adult problems, and that I can help them release that bondage that they carry with them. And it's my job to help them to become children who can achieve and succeed and just be happy for the little time that they're in my classroom with me. And just to make sure that they are safe and that they feel smart and victorious. And I grew up in Hartford as well, and I faced many obstacles and challenges. But my parents instilled in me the quality of a good education, hard work, determination, and that because of where we are does not determine who you will become. And that instilled in me, I try to bring to my children. No one determines who you become but you. And there's one young lady that just comes to mind who came from a neighborhood school. This was her first year at Annie Fisher STEM. She's non-proficient in reading and math, and she brought with her that I don't care attitude. We had many times conversations in the hallway, and I had to be really patient with her. One day, I just really looked at her and I said, these are your options. And I gave her a list of options. But one of those options is not failure. That is not an option. And so I try to instill in my children what my parents have instilled in me. And the very next day she went into math class, and my teammate said to me, she came up for small group instruction because she needed extra support, and the tears began to roll down her face. And she said, I didn't say anything to her. She wiped those tears away, and she was working on that math. And by the end of that class, she had gotten it. That was a moment for me, that I was able to reach that child, and that's what my parents instilled in me. So I'm trying to instill that in our children, my children, when they step in my door.
That's wonderful. You talked about, Sonia, stories and students coming with a story, and you know, as an English learner myself and as someone who was a new arrival at one point, you know, when I came to Hartford Public Schools, I too brought the story. But I'm curious, William, you know, you teach students that are English learners and first arrivals, and so tell us about some of those stories that you have to make sure that you embed and validate in your teaching.
Sure. The story is really important for English learners, and I, as the child of an immigrant myself, completely understand, because I grew up hearing the stories of what it was like for my mother to come to America in 1959, pre-Lau versus Nickel, pre-bilingual statute, pre-anything. They put her in a first grade classroom in Bridgeport and said, go ahead. But the thing that was actually worse for her was that they didn't just put her in the classroom and say, go ahead. They changed her name from Maria Elisa to Mary Alice. They changed how she should behave, who she should be, really pushed that kind of dominant North American culture at her. And so growing up as a child, I heard all of these stories. And now whenever I meet a student, a new student, I immediately think of my mother at 6. My mother's in her 60s. She just retired from Bridgeport. This year she's retiring. Her party was on Friday night. And being in that realm, I see those kids and I see the face of my 6-year-old mother in a picture, and I think, this is what I have to do. Maria Elisa needs to be vindicated of these things. And the story piece too comes into play because our students have so much strength, and our English learners are often identified as somebody who has a problem. Much like the same things with special ed students, like we say, oh, they have a problem. But the problem is that they don't have a problem. They actually have funds of knowledge that come from all over the place. And I worked at Buckley High School previous to McDonough, and I worked with their new arrivals. And what I was always struck by was students with formal interrupted education who come and maybe they'd stopped going to school at 2nd grade in their home country. They actually have work experience. They worked as children, which is, you know, different than what we're used to seeing. But that experience actually helps them to be better students when you tap into that. The question is, can you tap into that, and do you know to tap into that? And I don't know if everybody has that training or that knowledge base to be able to do that. So it's very important to me to help other people do that.
So you talked about the stories and its relation to students that are not proficient. You talked about how that embeds and weaves into students that have to learn a new language and experience a different culture. And so that requires an element in understanding of differentiation, which to you, Caitlin, right, and having been in your classrooms and knowing what you do with differentiation, can you talk to us about how you teach from a very differentiated perspective to make sure that your students access the content?
Absolutely. So I do teach a multi-age, so I teach kindergarten and 1st grade in one classroom, and I have students who don't know their letters, and I have students who are reading on a 3rd grade reading level. So it's really important to make sure that I'm meeting them at their individual needs. We try really hard not to refer to them as kindergarten and 1st graders, and I try really hard to make sure that I'm adjusting my instruction and I'm giving them the instruction that they need. So we do a lot of progress monitoring. We check in with them to make sure that we know where they are. It's super exciting to see when kids make that jump and my instruction needs to adjust to meet their jump. So a lot of small group work, a lot of differentiated lessons, not necessarily meaning that we take problems away or that we give them different work, but we just adjust it to meet their needs. So they're still completing work like everyone else, whether it's, you know, additional support or they need to be challenged. That might look like using manipulatives or graphic organizers or different reading text, you know, just to make sure that they're still accessing the curriculum either at that lower or that higher level. Just want to meet them where they are.
So it's important to, one, differentiate, and when you differentiate, I assume that you still keep the high expectation, right, of all students, regardless of where they are in the continuum. And Sonia, can you then share with us any perspective that you have around how learning is strongest when high expectations are upheld for students, for the adults, for the families, the community, right, in support of improving student outcomes?
Oh, definitely. High expectations is what fuels and drives my classroom, my instructions, my students. When I lower the bar, it says, I don't believe in you. When I raise the bar and I keep it that high, it means I'm going to work hard, I'm going to motivate myself, I'm going to push myself, and Mrs. Turner actually believes that I can reach this height. High expectations is essential for progress. Our students, for so long I felt like we're being spoon-fed. And now we're asking them to be, you know, critical thinkers, consumers of text. We're asking them to problem solve. These are high-level skills that we're asking them. So if I lower that standard and say, okay, I just want you to meet me here, then how are they ever going to be able to problem solve and then go back and figure out, well, how can I make this even better? So we don't lower the bar. Those high expectations, and I tell my parents that it takes our children to a whole new height of learning. So it's high expectations across the board for all of my students. We goal set, we reflect on our learning, My students goal set around NWEA. We know that's the district assessment. And we look at where the strengths are. We look at the areas that are in need of improvement, and we differentiate instruction to meet those goals. And when I looked at the data from the students, I had no children in the red, not even my special needs children. So for them to look at that and say, wow, I moved myself X amount of points, so many percents, they know I can do this. Ms. Turner believes in me. Now I have to believe in myself because look at what I've done. And they continue to move forward that way when you set those expectations. And I don't lower them, and I do not accept excuses. And it really makes the kids want to move forward.
So holding the bar up higher as a core element is what you're saying of making sure that students achieve. And we heard about differentiation, but I want to now kind of shift toward that culture of high expectations that we see in the classroom and how that relates to the adult practice, right? We know that adults are also learners, and so we as leaders have to commit to creating the conditions for our adults to learn and also engage at high levels. So Caitlin, I'm going to ask you as it relates to collaboration and adult learning practices as how those two serve as a condition to improve student success.
I'm very fortunate. The school that I work at, Breakthrough 2, has a ginormous culture of collaboration. We have the mindset that no one has all the answers. You know, I am not an expert in my field. My 2-3 teachers are not experts in their fields. I can learn from them, they can learn from me, and we're always seeking out support from one another. It's not seen as a weakness, it's not seen as not understanding something, it's seen as putting the students first. So when we seek out answers from our peers or support from our peers, it's not acknowledging that we don't know something, it's acknowledging that we need to do something else to put our students first, and we need to do something else to improve our students' learning. Because when we continuously learn, it trickles down to those students, and those students see us working together, they want to work together with each other, they have that commitment to learning because they see us having that same commitment to their learning.
And before you know it, you have a whole school, right,
Exactly.
that's committed to learning in a collaborative way.
Exactly.
And so that speaks to me as an approach to validate the whole person, right? In this case, the adult learner. So, William, in your classroom, when you think about your students and how you approach the students and their learning from a whole student, whole child perspective, talk to us about what that looks like.
So for our students, we're very lucky that we have a very strong curriculum for ESL in our district, and that curriculum is able to be personalized. And what I love about that is the students bring in, to connect it back to my story thing, they bring in their own ideas about many things. And so tapping into that and saying, what do you think about wetlands, which is what we were just doing. We had quite the field trip the other day. And also thinking about, now that I know where you are, keeping that bar high, like you said, and allowing them to know that there are steps that they can take to acquire English and to acquire the content that they need. And so it's very important to tap into that whole child approach, because effectively you really do have to keep things calm and happy in an ELL classroom. I think that there's a lot to be said about the effective filter, which is a theory that we have in language acquisition, that when it's up high, you're not able to actually learn something, which makes sense because I have that for algebra. I mean, that's just, and I know I'm not supposed to talk about that about math, and I love math, but for me, math was a struggle as a child, whereas languages were not. And so for me, I was always worried about like how I would feel if the teacher called on me. And so creating those structures in class, like as silly as it is, think, pair, share, really allows students to have that time where they can practice, they can think about what they're going to say before they have to say it, because otherwise it's me being like, okay, tell me, what do you think about this? And that's putting someone on the spot. So anytime that I can create an environment where it's individual, it connects to their life, and also we lower that effective filter, it really helps them to grow and blossom.
So you're speaking about your classroom as a system, right?
Yes.
And how you operate your system. You spoke about, Caitlin, how you as the adult learning that happens in your school. And so that's being responsive. And you spoke about making sure that you differentiate. So that's creating environments and systems in which they are responsive to the need of the person, the learner. So from a culturally responsive lens, I'm going to ask you, William, how do you ensure, right, that you come at the teaching and learning from a place that's responsive to who your students are and the stories in which they bring?
So step one, I think a lot of times we really play around a lot with these culturally responsive, culturally relevant, right? So step one, it's very important to me. I teach other teachers who are becoming TESOL cross endorsed. This is like my first thing that I tell them. Relevant means that the actual curriculum itself and the practices connect with who you're teaching, who's in front of you, who's your audience. But responsive is more, I know I have to teach maybe the Constitution or something very like, this is it, I can't really play with what I teach. And to me, that's where we get more bang for our buck. So step one, defining that. But the responsive piece also is understanding the cues that students give us, because it's very, for me, it's always been very natural for me to see how a student is feeling at the moment. And so it's being able to key into that, okay, I can tell that you're really stressed out about this right now, so let's figure out how to lower that. But more than that, it's also making sure that you create a warm and welcoming environment in the whole school. I'm lucky that I work at a school like McDonough where the staff really values diversity and really values the belief that all students come with different strengths. And so in my classroom in the Newcomer Center that we have all of the flags of the students' home countries. That's very, very superficial, so I'm kind of mad at myself for bringing that up as an example. But because it's just the flag, like if I didn't do anything else with that, it wouldn't be good enough, right? So, you know, I have the flag of Venezuela, for example, hanging because I have a student from Venezuela. But if I don't then create opportunities for the student to bring in their experience from Venezuela, there's no point in that flag hanging there because it's kind of like a hollow, shallow thing. So it's actually putting emphasis behind those connections and then allowing the students to grow and move from a place of strength because of that.
So there's a lot of passion there. Actually, all three of you, but you're coming at this from a very personal, very passionate perspective. So why do you teach? The same question for all of you. Why do you teach? Like if you had to, I know you talked about your story and making sure that what your parents instilled in you, but if you can kind of wrap it up, why do you teach?
Because I was born to. I honestly think there was nothing else for me to do but teach. Been teaching for so long now, I feel so old because I have students that come back to me and talk about marriage and inviting me to weddings and milestones and career choices. I have a young lady in class now who says, you know, I want to be a teacher just like you, Ms. Turner. I struggled. And if you overcame it, then I know I can overcome it. I teach because of parents saying, thank you. And I'm so lucky that my child's path has crossed your path. I teach because there's nothing else for me to do.
Caitlin, why do you teach your cuties? I've been in there,
kiddos.
friends.
I definitely teach to empower children. I want every child to know when they walk in my door, they are capable of whatever they set their mind to. I want them to know that they are smart, they are intelligent, they are capable of incredible things. So my job as an educator and why I teach is to empower children. So they know every day when they leave my classroom, every year when they leave my classroom, that they're going to go on to be something incredible. So that's why I teach.
William?
Why I teach has actually changed over the years. I first taught because it's the family business thing, right? So my mom and her aunt actually in Portugal taught as well. So it's like a long line, it's in my blood. So in many ways I feel that sense of born to do it. But over time I've learned that I really love creating connections between people. And teaching is this magical thing that allows you to do that. And teaching English learners specifically is amazing because you're able to take all of these students from different places and different languages and different belief systems and create connections across that then make the world a better place. And so for me, that's what I really want to instill in my students is that they know who they are and they're proud of who they are, and they know who everyone else is and they're happy for them for being who they are, and then they learn that as different as we are in the different languages and races that we have, we're actually very similar because we're all having a very human experience in life right now. And so for me, that's really where it's at for my teaching.
So you all come at it from a very humanistic place. And so how do you have fun? Not that being, coming at it from a humanistic place is not fun, but, I heard and I see your passion and your moral value set come alive when I asked you the question as to why do you teach. How do you balance the work and make it fun? Anyone?
Well, I teach K1, so it's impossible not to have fun. We're always having fun. Sometimes, you just have to stop and embrace the chaos a little bit and be like, we're just going to dance. We're going to dance right now. But other than that, just making it exciting, lots of songs and movements. Again, I teach K1, so that's a little bit different. But making it relevant to them, like we've all talked about, knowing their interests, knowing their backgrounds, and putting that into my teaching to make sure that they're connected and they're engaged in it. Just a lot of things that they can relate to, something that they understand. They know why they're here. We always get that question, why are we learning this? But, we really want to show them why we're learning this, and if we can apply it in real world knowledge and real world context, then that makes it so much more fun for them. But again, just embracing that chaos sometimes is what makes it fun.
Way to smile.
Yeah.
Okay. How about you, William?
For me, I think I'm just a little bit crazy. And so what happens is in the
Say
classroom.
more about that.
Yeah. So it's a little. So I have within me this little streak of the need to have that quick-witted humor, which I actually liken to my father's Irish side. And so what happens is I really off the cuff can think of funny things to say in class, and there's that whole cognitive dissonance thing that now that I've taught older kids is really awesome because it snaps them back to attention where they're like, oh, what are you talking about? so every once in a while I'll let out a crazy scream and they're like, what are you doing? And it's because I want them to realize that I'm making this fun for them, but also because they're now going to be like, okay, he's nuts. Let's figure out why he's doing that. And it's really that piece. And as much as we don't sing and dance as much in middle school or in high school when I was there is still a lot to be said for infusing excitement into things. You can't just be like, okay, turn to page 40 and answer questions 1 through 4. You're never going to get traction there. And so it's really making things come alive and understandable for them.
And in my classroom, it's a blend of both. I come from it thinking that it's, I don't want to say theatrical, but my children never know what I'm going to do next. And so they're always constantly watching and waiting and listening. And just the text, the novels that we read, the way we read them with expression and how we put life to them. And 6th grade is chaos too sometimes, but it's a good chaos, it's a good learning.
Yeah.
And the kids love to collaborate and work together and come up with ideas. And I let the kids really run the classroom. I stand back as a facilitator and I just guide. And they get the learning done, but they do it in a way that is entertaining to them.
So fun, differentiation, adult learning, collaborative practice, I heard. Certainly heard your passion and your commitment and your moral connection to this work. High expectations, that's a lot, right? That's a lot to really step into what you do every single day, right? And to make sure that you encompass all of that. And so just want to say that you make the magic and you're still here and you're speaking so proudly of it. And so for that, I and Hartford Public Schools thank you. Our students thank you for your commitment, and I cannot wait to see what you continue to do every single day for your students. So thank you very much for your commitment and your dedication. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We want to thank our guests for their time and their energy in sharing their valuable knowledge, their fascinating thoughts, their commitment, their passion around teaching and making sure that our students are successful. Please do visit our website to find helpful resources about education at Hartford Public Schools at hartfordschools.org. I leave you with Sonia Turner's poignant acceptance speech at our Hartford Teacher of the Year 2017 event.
First and foremost, I would like to thank my Father which art in heaven, for without him I would not be standing here. I would like to thank my husband, Corey. my son and my daughter, Jaleese and Jordan, along with my mother, Emma Walker, and my 3 sisters. I thank them for their love and encouragement. I must also give thanks to my Annie Fisher family, because this moment would not have been possible without them believing in me and bestowing this great honor upon me. I must give special thanks to my instructional coach, Ms. Wilson Ruff, my incredible and supportive teammate, Ms. Louise Poyada, and my colleague and friend, Ms. Kimber, for being my managers, editors, and the ones I bounced ideas off of, and for letting me scream and go crazy for the amount of work that had to be done for this honor, along with teaching. But I also want to thank my students who inspire me every day. I do what I do because of them, and I hope they know how much they are loved and cared for on a daily basis. I love working for the Hartford Public School System because it is my home. I went to school and grew up in Hartford and had some wonderful teachers, and I felt it was my duty to give back. I want to thank everyone who believed in me and thought that I was worthy of this honor. Thank you for allowing me to represent all of you that make a difference every day in the lives of our children. I want to leave you with these inspiring words that makes me become a great teacher every day. Struggle as hard as you can for whatever you believe in. It is in that struggle that you will find your passion, beliefs, and your heart have to work as one to accomplish the goals you set for yourself to become successful. These are words by June Archer. We have to teach our students to persevere through the struggle. Sometimes we have to climb an uphill battle, but we need to find a way through, around, and over that challenge. Our students are good children who sometimes need love, compassion, a lot of motivation, and a reason to believe in themselves. We, the teachers of Hartford, must inspire and expect greatness from each child, no matter the circumstance. Our students must and will achieve great heights as long as they believe in themselves and we believe in them. Thank you.